my list, and I'm going to do it for a reason. Unlike everything else I'm reading here. I wanted to put this on my list tonight, and then I decided to not read it because my friends were telling me that they think that often I read this poem and nobody in the audience has any idea what I'm talking about. And
what are you talking about?
And I sometimes get that sense as well, often when I read it, and so I was sitting in my chair thinking, I wonder if that is a problem with the writing, or a problem with our culture, or what. And there's a chance that it's a problem with the writing. I'm open to that, but I'm gonna read it anyway. There is a reason my body creaks like a closing casket every time I fuck with the lights left on. It is the same reason my friend sets fire to photographs of birds and follows the smoke with pleading eyes. We both had years when the phoenix didn't rise. When we slept in beds of cindered feathers and held hollow ashen beaks the way other kids hold ice cream cones. I sucked the bones of a songbird's rotting wing, and you think your pills are gonna fix me, doctor. You think I'm gonna chase this down with water. The shame as loud as his next girl's nightmares. I tied my tongue like a ribbon in my baby sister's hair, like a bow around a gift I gave to my mother and father, and my silence equaled every Christmas morning when we were still happy and grateful, but my silence was also his next girl's eyes, falling like timber when no one chose to hear, her roots ripped up, her ground eroding to the din of an old man's zipper. 20 years later, I wake in damp sheets, my body trembling to the ghost of her voice cracking like a frozen lake, and I don't even know her name. Never saw her face. Only heard the rumor that he'd moved on to the hemorrhage of another perfect thing. And now here, I sing through cinder, through microphones raised like white flags in war zones, through poems I have dug from my throat like fishing hooks from here. I look back at my voice lowered to half-mast, how he must have stood there with his dirty hand on his dirty heart, laughing like a broken levee, as his next girl woke with body bags beneath her eyes, and enough shame in her gut to give the hurricane her own name. If I could see her face, if I could face the eye of her storm, how would I ever tell her that I speak for a living? But I offer my own wounds as condolence. Would I say his claws carved me animal? Would I say at 14 years old, I threw my bloody fist into my boyfriend's face till his eyes swelled shut and his tears turned crimson and his jaw cracked till I was finally convinced his hands were not every man's hands? Would I tell her I have stood beneath street lamps, waiting for the swarming flies to identify my body as carcass, to swallow every cell of salt and leave nothing behind but the trellis of my untouched bones? I remember the fault lines in the corners of his eyes, the way he shook hands with my father, the look on his face beneath the swollen sun, even his shadow looked guilty, the concrete made crime scene by his touch. Would I tell her this? Would I ask if she has ever outlined her own body in chalk? Is there yellow tape in your top dresser drawer for those nights when your true love's kiss is an anthem to a dead country, and you find yourself with rope burns around your neck, begging the bodies of strangers to not respect you in the morning? In the morning I shovel my blood from the white snow, I wipe my frantic breath from the window, and I bind my breast so that something will hold my breath so tight, not even the air in my lungs could be identified as woman. Woman, are you a carbon copy of myself? Is there a boy inside you painting his cells with the charcoal of cinder feathers so you will never again glow in the dark the way girls do? Woman, if I knew your name, if I could face the eye of your storm and the warning locked in my voice box that never came, would I tell you all of this? And after that, would I ever find the nerve to admit that even if I could, I wouldn't take my silence back? My father owned a gun. He would have blown that man apart. My mother owned a mother's heart. Everything would have broken. Everything but you.
Yeah.
So in case that's not clear, that was about this one time I went to the circus. I know that was wrong.
That's so disturbing.
If I was famous, then there would be an article about the inappropriate thing I said after I read that poem.
You are famous.
Okay. what is on the list next. And this poem, another very happy poem. A while ago I was told a story about a soldier, I was told this story about a soldier who was set on fire and burned to death because he was queer. And after I heard that story, I spent quite a bit of time reading similar stories about people in the GLBTQI continuum community who had been tortured or killed that way, by being set on fire and burned. And I kept thinking about all those people and kept thinking about their voices and what they might say from where they are now. The night I was torn from the pages of their Bible and burned alive. My ashes came down like snow, and a girl who had never seen my face saw me falling from the sky, and lay down on her back to make an angel in the powder of my bones. From heaven I watched her, though my eyes were still flame, and my ribs were still blue. They didn't win, I whispered, as her arms built my wings. They didn't win, look at that moon. It is a pebble in my hand. Tonight I could skip it across that fog-drunk sea till their lashes accordion in the light, and all they know of hate is that it couldn't beat the love out of me. That when they dropped me to the grave, I fell like a bucket into a well and came up full, carving my lover's name into the skin of a weeping willow that had spent its entire life laughing at the rain. Hold me like a lantern, staircase my spine, when they bring their children to my funeral to scream faggot at my dust. Tell them I was born into this casket, but I wouldn't pull the splinters from my heart any more than Christ would pull the thorns from his crimson head. They can come 1,000 times with their burning match and their gasoline, with their hungry laws and their empty mouths full of prayers to that God who greeted me at his gates with his throat full of trumpets and his tears full of shame, as his trembling palms collected the cinder of his children's crime. I know what holy is. I know the soul is shaped like a bowl. I know the lies we try to fill it with, and we spill too often the orchards inside. But my lover's shoes were tied with guitar strings, and when I walked beside, there was a silo in my chest. There was a field full of sun. There was a river full of gold that we left to pick our sweethearts from the trees that kept uprooting tombstones so the names of the dead would crumble into poems. Write me down like this. Say my ashes never made the news. Say the jury was full of shotguns. Then say the snow that fell on the tip of your tongue refused to melt away. Say this to the kids hiding their heartbeats from their father's fists. I planted the garden of my kiss. I opened the night with my teeth. I love so hard that when they press their ear to the track, the train they hear coming will still be my chest. A rumbling harpoon, a sky they cannot bury. Look at that moon. I am a pebble in her hand, a harmonica held to the mouth of the river, where nothing ever burns.